busiest time of year for us when it comes to sales and everything else that goes into it. Not to mention the echo that pops up from time to time, like it just did for a second, and like I'm trying to navigate on this broadcast. I don't have enough bandwidth and power to do it. So if it's that big of a passion point for other people, here's my flip it around. You can do it if it matters that much. Because Brad Bradley, it means that much to him within the Seminole District. And I understand that there are fans out there who are not shy of their opinions of Ty Tracy's former high school football coach over at Heritage. But I give him a lot of credit because one of the things that's crystallized in year 2 of doing this, and I did a TrostLaw.com fast take on this. It's up with a slew of content that's already out at Fastlane, Edlane, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, however you choose to consume that. But I think there's as much benefit to the players, coaches, and teams as there is to we in the media who we're not starved for content at this point. College programs are back in action. NFL preseason games are ramping up. We've got them for you, some of them at least, right here on the VTRN Sports app.
Yippee!
Can't wait. But in reality, the real fun begins week 0 of college football. Yes, we have week 0 football games because we care about you at the Virginia Talk Radio Network. By the way, can I take a quick detour for a second here in the fast lane, Trey?
Time to take a detour in the fast lane.
First of all, if you're Tech, if you're Virginia, Liberty, or JMU, I don't understand why more programs aren't looking at participating in week 0. I've said this before, but it's not Labor Day weekend, which is the opening weekend of college football. It's the weekend before that because you get an extra bye week out of it. You start your season a week earlier. So you get an extra bye that's allotted into your schedule, which is a huge advantage for these teams. It's a market inefficiency. And one more thing for good measure, you get added promotional opportunities for your program. I don't expect this to be a one-year deal if they stick around in Chapel Hill. But Belichick and Lombardi in North Carolina doing a week 0 game next year, the Dublin game that has often been ACC teams, Florida State getting upset by Georgia Tech in 2024.
Upset. By the end of the year, Georgia Tech was clearly the better team.
Very much so. But we're going on season opening betting odds, which do that for whatever it's worth and at your own peril. I expect North Carolina to do that more and more. Like, I fully anticipate that this would be a real thing that we're going to see, because if there's one thing that Belichick and Lombardi have been great at during their tenure, it's market inefficiencies. Not to mention extra promotion and publicity from being a limited schedule. If I'm Liberty, I would want that. I know there's something special about the home opener Labor Day weekend, and Liberty, they've had that regularly, although weather has impacted it like last year. Dear God, please don't let that be the case again this year. But I'm very curious about that. And again, I think programs will embrace it. And let's be real here. If you get the college football playoff adjustment, which I think needs to come, where instead of it going into mid-January and the ratings go in the tank because there's, people have kind of moved on from college football to college basketball, and you're going head-to-head with the NFL in terms of all the promotional juice over the weekend that goes into that Monday night, mid-January game. If you move it up a little bit, back to its old traditional slot, and the conference championship weekend goes straight into the playoff, and you start week 0, I do think there's some merit to that. But anyway,
after Ed's potentially unnecessary detour, let's get back on the road in the fast lane.
The value of Seminole District football media days. A lot of it speaks to the fact that you get more clarity from teams. And there were some overarching themes, and I'll be curious what Ben Cates of newsadvance.com takes away from that when he joins us in the fast lane. We'll try to get to some of the sound bites from players and coaches over the next couple of weeks about what they believe about their team, but allow us to opine on it because, we were there for the Virginia Talk Radio Network and ask some questions as well. But there are a number of things that pop out, but the biggest picture takeaway, big picture, sometimes we get too into the weeds in the fast lane, which we will do with Liberty in a moment, is that if you're looking at players and coaches, the value they get, not just from a publicity standpoint and the fact that we're talking about Seminole District football, Heritage and Glass, Brookville and JF, Liberty, Amherst, Rustburg, and LCA. Not just the fact that we talk about them, and we've got clips from 4 of those programs, Glass, LCA, Liberty, and Brookville, at Fastlane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. But it's the fact that for a lot of these players and teams, they start to speak their goals out into existence. And it's one thing to have them within the confines of your facility. But especially for high schoolers, some of speaking something into existence is when you start putting it out there in the ether about where you need to improve or what your ambitions are. All of a sudden, it generates support from the community, maybe pressure as well, but the reality of adjusting to expectations. And those expectations already exist, but it's the good and the bad of ratcheting it up. The bad of it is you may not be ready for that. And, we forget so often, and I mean, look, we're as guilty as anybody here in the fast lane of forgetting that, these are 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old young adults. I won't call them kids. They're growing. They have to learn these things, but there still is a mental part of this of, acclimation to pressure and expectation. But I think there's value to it because you hear these teams put their goals out. The fact that LCA, they are a standard bearer now in the Seminole District, even though no Gideon Davidson this year, which is going to be a big adjustment for the Bulldogs. Or the volume of former head coaches that are assisting at places like Brookville and Rustburg in particular this year. Or the fact that for Amherst, which went 5-5 and missed the playoffs, Glass 5-5, lost to Amherst, but made the playoffs and lost in the opening round to GW Danville last year, speaking it into existence of really what they need to do to not just be a team that squeaks into the playoffs, but a team that makes the playoffs and can finish games and make noise, because that level of consistency was missing from those teams. But you heard the players and coaches speak about that. Liberty's in their own spot. They've got a new head coach in Brad Womack, who is a first-year coach, took over, less than a month ago. And I give them a lot of credit for the fact that they were pretty confrontational about the 37-game losing streak that dates back almost 4 seasons for Liberty, and how much ending that is a goal and focus point. But also the steps to doing that, having increased participation. Like, again, you're speaking that into existence. The idea of having more people. And I credit Liberty football, including, Kanan Thompson and Aiden Cottrell, who were the players with Brad Womack, the head coach at Liberty, for mentioning that they are seeing an improvement in numbers, but they need more of that. Because when you're talking about small towns like Bedford, Virginia, and when we're mentioning just high school sports in general, sometimes putting those goals out there does give your community a chance to rally behind you. Look, if you did a Seminole District preseason poll, they don't do them. There would be people who would vote. I'd like to think we probably would get a vote here at the Virginia Talk Radio Network, maybe a couple, with Ty Tracy and myself having both done that, or Coach Kennedy, who's seen the games and will be doing JF football presented by TrostLaw.com with us once again this year. But we might get a couple. Everyone would put Liberty at the bottom of that. Like, they're riding an almost 4-season winless streak. And I think undoubtedly the toughest district in the area, maybe in the entire Commonwealth of Virginia, top 2 for the most part, bottom of Seminole District football action. So just breaking the win streak is a start. But when you put out there that you need numbers, or the fact that it is looking like for the first time in a couple of years, they're going to have a JV program at Liberty, that does not mean they're going to win a game this year. And certainly, I don't think they're going to come close to getting above 500 on the year. That would mean, a 5-5 record, which is a lot to ask for a program that hasn't won. But the fact you put it out there, again, it's speaking goals into existence, which is an amazing thing for a lot of these players. And I think they're to be commended for putting it out there. And there will be cases where players and programs speak their goals into existence and they don't actually come to fruition. And there's some vulnerability to that. But I think far too often in life, we're afraid of putting goals out there. I'm as guilty as anybody at times of not wanting to put goals and expectations that are out there. Again, to get my confession on here in the fast lane, I am as guilty as anybody of having those moments. But I think it's powerful. And yes, when you have a team behind you and your team leaders and your coach are speaking these things, but there are other players that are out there and there are folks in the community that want to cheer you on and support you, or folks that are on coaching staffs, and other support staff around the program. I think there's power to it. And you may not realize your goal, but it also is a learning lesson. And I mean, again, look, we care about how teams do on the field. I'm not, Pollyanna and believe that everybody in high school football gets everything they should out of that experience. Although maybe for some, and I know as a high school athlete myself, I think I look back more fondly on those times once I got out of high school and college and realized running's different because you can actually be a better runner now as a grown-up than you can in high school. And I realize I'm blessed to have literally lived that part out, being better now than I was in high school. But I also know that's the exception, not the norm. And it's the beauty of high school sports is learning how to go about that, how to put a goal out there to reach it and get the adulation and have earned it, or maybe not, but learning the lessons of what it means to do that. And it can sharpen you and make you a better person going forward. And that's where, again, short term, yes, for putting goals out there, but long term as well, there are real benefits to these programs, much like their benefits to shopping at InsaneRadioDeals.com. The most notable one, you're not paying full price for any item that you would normally get. Gift certificates to the Caribbean Jerk Park, the Yard on 5th Street, 801 Raw Bar, and even those general admission or reserved seats with the $10 food voucher for the Lynchburg Hillcats, only a month left of games in the regular season. They're all available at less than face value, and the only place is at InsaneRadioDeals.com. Before we get into the weeds, by the way, on Liberty's quarterback competition and other competitions, one other note, I thought also it was interesting because we touched on a lot of teams in the Seminole District, but I think the two that are looking to take those next steps, they have been steadily teams that win the majority of their games in the Seminole District. They're programs that have championship pedigree, but programs that have kind of struggled to get over the hump of winning multiple games in the playoffs. They might win their first, but then they kind of peter out after that. And yes, the competition is really stiff for Heritage and Jefferson Forest. But the reality that both of them understand that they're in good spots, but there's still an extra gear they need to find as well to turn those type of performances from just making the playoffs and winning a game to a spot where they're legitimately going to Thanksgiving or beyond. And that is one of the other takeaways as well, which we'll get to with Ben Cates. Meanwhile, time to get into the weeds and kind of decipher what he said and what he meant. Most notably, what he said and what he meant, Liberty's assistant coaches speaking on competitions and the difference for one position versus the rest of the team.
The best place to find true insight is in a press conference.
He cares about the players. We've got a true veteran that's been in this game a long time. He really wanted this opportunity.
It's not a media scrum.
They found a way to persevere through it. They didn't get down. They didn't start pointing fingers. They all looked at themselves in the mirror and said, hey, we're going to figure out what it takes. The least important thing in a game is the score at halftime, right?
It's listening to the Fast Lane dissect what's really being said by your favorite players, coaches, and administrators.
In the 40-minute game, no one cares. You got to be able to execute on both ends of the floor. Man, they play hard for 40 minutes.
It's time for what he or she said and what he or she meant.
So Liberty's in this competition now. There are a lot of position battles, and John Manson from AseaofRed.com has put up their top 5 position battles, which he will discuss with us. We'll ask him about it, and we'll see if he answers. I'm sure he will, because I want to promote his great article at AseaofRed.com around 5:45 today in the Fast Lane. And if you can't make it, no worries. Fast Lane, Ned Lane, however you consume podcasts. By the way, really appreciate people who are doing that. Numbers continue to rise. Great work on the morning warm-up with Trey Lyle, and thanks to those that also tune into the Fast Lane. But when I'm looking at competition, and it's different at Virginia, they spent big money on Chandler Morris as their quarterback, and he's clearly the guy. Presuming he's healthy, Kyron Jones is the guy at Virginia Tech, and I would say should be, despite the hype around Pop Watson. A lot of his best moments came, like in the Virginia game, for example, when, let's be real here, they were struggling defensively over the stretch of last season. When he faced more competent defenses, Manny Diaz and Duke or Minnesota, Watson really struggled. But quarterback's different. Liberty's in a unique spot. They are trying to figure out who's going to replace Caden Salter and his productivity from 2023 and his talent and, to an extent, productivity last year. It's different in other roles, though. And this is where, like, Kyle Krantz, for example, co-defensive coordinator for Liberty, mentioned last week about how players get to define their roles through competition.
A lot of games come down to the fourth quarter, so you want to have your best pass rushers and your best defense linemen available then in those moments. Our challenge to our group, Coach kind of just said it, like, you're going to have a role in this team. Now, they define their role by how they practice, how reliable they are, how hard they compete. How hard they compete in the meeting rooms to know what to do and know how to do it, and then have the discipline to do it over and over again correctly.
What Kyle Krantz is saying and means is particularly, that's my side of the ball defensively as the co-defensive coordinator at Liberty. So he can be in a spot where you're preaching competition, and how much playing time you get, it varies based upon not just what you do in the game, but also can you translate that before the season, but even during the season when you're banged up, when it feels more like a grind and you may be getting distractions about where your next destination will be, can you block all that out and get the playing time you want now to set yourself up for future opportunities? And for Liberty's defensive side of the ball, they have the right talent, I think, composite. Edge rusher and linebacker looks very good. They lost key pieces, notably TJ Bush and Jay Hardy on the defensive line, but they still have a lot of key players that are returning. I think size in the defensive tackle spot could be a bit of a concern. We'll see how that materializes for Liberty. They don't really have a lot over 300 pounds. They got a couple that are kind of right around that mark, but you like to have a little bit more size up front. But other than that, there's a lot of versatility. But there's one position where it just is different than anything else, and that's the quarterback position. When Willie Corn, co-offensive coordinator, spoke with the media last week, long explanation, but we're going to play it all because it's worth hearing about how the quarterback competition, and I agree with Willie Corn in this philosophy, why they right now have multiple guys competing, but the goal as you get to the start of the season is not to have a rotation at that position like anywhere on defense, and frankly, the majority of offense may be saved for if you get a real good offensive line unit working together.
I think quarterback's just different. I think with the other position groups, you have to be a receiver. You need to have 6 to 7 guys you feel like you can go out there and win with, because injuries are going to happen everywhere. So you got to be prepared for it. Same thing at running back. With us being a 2-back offense, yeah, we'll get to the point where when we play the first snap of offense against Maine, you'll have your 2 starters, but we use those guys so much, you're going to play 4 guys. So I think it's a little bit different. Those position groups, you won't get to that point after the 9th practice as far as maybe shutting down certain guys' reps like you maybe would with quarterbacks. I think those will continue to go because you got to continue to develop guys, because the starting offense and starting defense you have against Maine is not probably going to look the same when you get to the middle of October. You're going to have guys get banged up and all that stuff. So you got to continue to develop and really try to play into the fact that everybody has a role in this team and you want them to take pride in it. And when you have that, you'll have that connected locker room that we have right now. You don't want to lose that when, okay, I'm not the starter. I want to be the starter, but I'm the backup. I still want to have a connected and committed football team. I think we have that, but time will tell in terms of once we start kind of settling in on some decisions on the depth chart.
I mean, that's real. Like, again, I think there's a lot of reality that's come out of Liberty, and some of this is for the coaching staff as well. I think it's reasonable to be critical of never having handled a season like last year where you have players that, frankly, I think, kind of eyeing opportunities, and maybe they wish they had opportunities after 2023 that did not materialize, and maybe they felt like they were, I'll use air quotes for this, but stuck at Liberty last year when they didn't want to. Whereas I think this year, you've had a chance to kind of clean it out, and you do lose some talent, and you hate especially the spring portal window and the talent losses like Jay Hardy and TJ Bush. But ultimately, you've got a core that you can build upon. And in Conference USA, with Liberty's coaching staff and the acumen they have, I don't think it's unreasonable, nor do the sports books who have Liberty as the prohibitive favored over Western Kentucky and the rest of the conference. But Liberty should be the favorite, and the expectations should be that high for Liberty. And it's not unreasonable or unfair when you got a coaching staff that's well supported, the fact that they're in the rev share program and they have the financial resources to play that game in a way that their competition, they do not. And the fact that Liberty also, I do believe the offensive and defensive systems are ones where you can excel and they complement each other well, particularly when the run game gets going. And there are pieces on that team where you can see guys stepping up. I have concerns about the offensive line gelling, but you got one of the better coaches with Bill Durkin in that unit. Defensive line, they're talking about a lot of depth there. Kyle Krantz mentioned it, and that's a goal. But again, I do have a little bit of question marks, particularly on the defensive line and the size and girth you want over the long haul with Liberty. I think that's a reasonable concern. But ultimately, the pieces seem like they fit together, but quarterback does have to be treated differently for Liberty because you need one guy that can assert himself, which is why I believe if you're Liberty, you're stressing these guys more than ever in camp right now. Different if you have a quarterback and you're trying to increase what you ask of him if it's a returner. This time it's, hey, this is a guy that has the right skill set. Vasco, Merdinger, Berger, Bradford, any of those. But wanting to see who can handle all that because you need to get clarity and answers before the main game. When we come back in the Fast Lane, we'll get clarity on high school football with Ben Cates of NewsAdvance.com, then back to clarity on the Liberty Flames with John Manson from AseaofRed.com. Here in the Fast Lane, VTR and Sports app, and Fast Lane Ed Lane wherever you listen to podcasts.
Mark Dalton here with Terry Subaru. Love to drive? Then you'll love the all-new 2025 Subaru Wilderness family. These cars are built for adventure with symmetrical all-wheel drive, rugged capability, and legendary Subaru reliability. These stylish vehicles are ready for anything. Plus, every new Subaru we sell comes with an exclusive Terry Promise, a lifetime powertrain warranty. Visit us on Forest Road in Lynchburg or browse our inventory online 24/7 at terrysubaru.com. Terry Subaru. You'll love our cars.
When it comes to legal matters, there is no substitute for experience. Hi, I'm Randy Trost with Trost Law. We've gained knowledge from serving Virginians for over 4 decades. Since 1982, we've handled auto accidents and personal injury cases ranging from simple fender benders to complex tractor-trailer cases. And we're ready to put our experience to work for you. We hope you never need our services, but if you do, just give us a call at 777-HURT or visit us at trostlaw.com.
Join the Lynchburg Hillcats at Bank of the James Stadium this summer for any of your favorite nightly promotions. New this year is Senior Sluggers Tuesdays, where members of the Silver Sluggers Club get in free. Wednesday is Winning Wednesday, where purchasing one ticket gets you into every Wednesday game the rest of the year. As always, we'll have Thirsty Thursdays and giveaways and fireworks on the weekend, and free admission for Kids Club members on Sunday. Get your tickets today at lynchburg-hillcats.com.
Hey, small to medium business owners, if you're frustrated with slow IT support, high costs, or paying for services you just don't use, it's time for a change. Hi, I'm Colt with We Fix Stupid Computers. We provide reliable on-site and remote support tailored for businesses just like yours. And we go beyond just fixing problems. We empower your staff with real tech knowledge so they can work smarter every day. From repairs to training to full IT support, we save you time, stress, and money. Call We Fix Stupid Computers, 434-525-8590, where smart support meets real savings.
Your home is more than just walls and windows. It's where life happens. And at Right Choice Construction, we get that. We're not just builders. We're fathers, mothers, neighbors, just like you. And every nail and every beam reflects our commitment to creating a place you're proud to live in. With Right Choice Construction, you're choosing a team that's been perfecting the art of building for years. So build with us, build with experience, build with quality, build with Right Choice.
Hey gang, this is Bud Foster, former defensive coordinator for the Virginia Tech Hokies. You're listening to The Fast Lane with Ed Lane and Trey Lyle. Join the chat at Trey Lyle BT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram.
Well, a lot of Virginia Tech fans are anxious for that, and we will have that for you Sunday, the 31st of December. Not December, 31st of August. We're not even in the embers yet. That will be September, and then October, November, and December. But we will eventually get to that here in the Fast Lane. But that's college football. Before college football, high school football. Someone who joined us at Heritage High School today for the second annual Seminole District Football Media Days and joins us now in the Fast Lane is Ben Cates of newsadvance.com. Ben Cates, the number 8 on Twitter to connect with him that way. Ben, great to be chatting with you. One of the takeaways we had, and I did a trostlaw.com fast take on this this afternoon, and it's at Fast Lane Ed Lane for our listeners who want to check it out. But having seen this last year, Seminole District Media Days, and now this year, am I off base in this theory that there's value, not just from a promotional standpoint for players and coaches with Seminole District Football Media Days, but also speaking goals into existence and maybe in a way helping to rally support for their particular programs as they look to have momentum, especially at the start of the season when everybody would like to start off well in non-district play, knowing how challenging the Seminole District can be?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ed. I think the Seminole District Media Day for the past 2 years now running, it's a chance to get all the media members together to really kind of, for little 10-minute sessions with each team. That's not to say that each, I, for instance, will still go out to practices preseason and all that kind of stuff and get stories that I want. But it's a chance for teams to really just kind of get their goals out there in front of all the local media and, kind of really just highlight their kids and say, kind of, we're obviously everyone's optimistic in the beginning of August, but it's a chance to get out there and say, hey, here's what we've got coming, and we're really excited to get going and try to set some new goals for the year and see what happens. And there's a lot of talent, I think, in the Seminoles so far that we've seen. And I'm sure we'll continue to identify talent as we have more access to practices and that sort of thing.
In honor of the guests who will appear on the morning warm-up tomorrow with our own Trey Lyle, who's pulling his visuals at Fastlane, Ed Lane, and VTR in Sports on Facebook Live and YouTube.
Well, it depends. I'll have two guests tomorrow.
The one that's a colleague of Ben Cates from newsadvance.com. In honor of Bryson Gordon, who will appreciate this reference, and yes, we're currying brownie points from your colleague, Ben. We're going to go all Drake and start from the bottom, so to speak, when it comes to Seminole District Media Days. How surprised were you that the Liberty Minutemen, who are riding a 37-game losing streak and have struggled for years, the last couple of years at least, with participation numbers, Coach Womack and the players, Kanan Thompson and Aiden Cottrell, they were all very outspoken about ending the losing streak being a goal, but also the fact that they have taken up efforts themselves to try to boost the program, which may pay a bit of dividends this year, but knowing that it has a chance to pay more dividends in the future.
Yeah, it's got to be encouraging because, a lot of people talk about, when you talk about high school football, a lot of people talk about coaches going out and recruiting the hallways. That's something that you see at, for instance, one county schools such as Amherst, where there are just a ton of kids, and you want to identify the kids that could play a big role on your team. It's also something that you see on television, like Friday Night Lights or something. Hey, come play for us. And so my point is coaches do that a lot. It's one thing to have that happen. It's another thing for players talking to their own guys, to be like their own friends, to be like, come out, please join us, help us change the culture of this program. And that's what you want. You want kids that are that invested. If you're just showing up knowing that you have a losing streak and you're just kind of going through the motions, chances are, you might end the losing streak, but you might not end up being very good. And so when you go out and you can recruit guys and get guys out there, you're creating those memories and you're creating more chances for success, because if you have injuries, you can have other guys fill in those roles after they've learned the game a little bit. And that's what is critical at a school like Liberty, where the numbers in recent years have been so low to where you have almost no one on the sideline when guys are out on the field because you've got injuries or whatever, low numbers to start with. And so really key to have people being like, come out and play for us. And it looks like the numbers right now at least are up for Liberty. And there's, optimism about ending the losing streak, which would, be a notable development for that program.
And not only that, but the idea of having a JV program for Liberty High School over in Bedford, they haven't had that in a couple of years. How invaluable is that? I mean, we take it for granted because most programs in this area don't just have JVs, but they often have B teams. They have middle school programs. LCA, we know they're a bit of a different animal because players will move from out of the area to the area, and they've had some of those in recent years. They've also lost some who have gone the other direction. But, how invaluable is that in something that Liberty fans should be excited about, and folks in Bedford should be excited about, that, oh, wow, there might actually be, I'm going to curse for a moment in the fast lane because when we say hope, we like to beep it out. But there is a level of hope that Liberty might be able, again, to get a JV program, which means immediate results may not be grand this year, but there's the opportunity to continue to establish something as opposed to this just being cobbled together players and whatever happens, happens.
Helps you prepare for the future, and you got to hope that you can sustain it, right? And then also gives guys a chance to develop, maybe even for this year, guys you could bring up later on if there are injuries, or if someone's really coming along really fast, you could bring them up, and they just haven't had that opportunity recently. So interesting development there as well.
Ben Cates, 8. Twitter, newsadvance.com. They're places you'll be able to keep up with his great coverage, not only from Seminole District Football Media Days, which were today, but all of the lead up to the high school football season in about 3.5 weeks for regular season action. But, benefit games, 2.5 weeks. And believe it or not, Ben, a week and a half, we've got scrimmages on the horizon. Back to the theme, though, of speaking goals into existence. A couple of teams that seem like they're kind of in the similar spot. They both were 5-5 last year. Glass made the playoffs even though Amherst beat them in the regular season. But how similar did you get the impression from Jamar Lovelace and the EC Glass Hilltoppers and then Coach Moore at Amherst that both of them are in the spot where finishing and being able to actually have the strength to withstand the Seminole District, especially at the end of the year and at the end of games, is something that they're emphasizing with their programs?
Yeah, absolutely. Two different scenarios there, but same kind of result that you're getting toward, I think. Whereas at EC Glass, some really good regular season wins. I think EC Glass really put every single thing it had into beating Heritage, and it was just a phenomenal result for EC Glass in that game. And then, that Glass Amherst game, I remember that pretty well also. But at the end of the day, Glass was not really happy. It was really obvious from the beginning of the year that they were having trouble running the ball and having a lot of success throwing it in the offense. Defense was really good, but that glaring kind of inability to run the ball hurt them, and it hurt them the entire season. And so that's kind of what Jamar kind of harped on today was, hey, we've gotten better in this regard, and this is something that's going to help us, maintain down the stretch and win tough Seminole District games and tough non-district games as well, is running that football and getting back to that smash mouth kind of what the Seminole is known for. And then at Amherst, little different scenario where Amherst wasn't able to close out like three really close one possession games. One in particular with Heritage that went down to the wire. That was one of the best high school football games I've seen in several years. It was one, I think, for the Seminole record books. That was one that Amherst really wanted and wished that they could have had it back. And so now they're focusing on winning those close games and getting in the playoffs, because those close games kept Amherst from getting in.
Ben Cates 8, Twitter, newsadvance.com, and our Seminole District Media Day updates and thoughts. 4 of the schools are already at Fast Lane, Ed Lane, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We'll have 4 more that drop tomorrow, good Lord willing. Ben, 2 other schools that are in similar spots, and we're kind of going in groupings of 2 till the very end. But the other 2 schools are Jefferson Forest and Heritage. Both have got very great coaching staffs with great experience in winning consistently over seasons. How much are they in the spot where it's kind of fine-tuning? They have a lot of skill position talent back at both these programs. Heritage's O-line looks a little more settled than Jefferson Forest. But for the Pioneers at Heritage and JF, and of course, full promotion, JF Cavalier Football presented by TrostLaw.com, comes back this fall to WIQO 100.9. But both of those programs, JF and Heritage, how much are they in the spot where it's really finding those little margins where they can turn making the postseason into a deeper postseason run?
Yeah, I think that's key for both of those teams. JF is tasked with replacing its entire offensive line, and an incredible task. But at the same time, JF has done a really good job under JT Cruz and a lot of other folks who have been really engaged in that program in bringing guys along throughout the ranks. And so we'll see how that offensive line kind of shakes out right now in the future. But right now they're optimistic about what could happen there. But you're really counting on, for both of those teams, your senior leadership to guide you through. These are teams that have a lot of experience with guys who are playing since they were sophomores. Heritage is the same way. You've got guys at running back, at quarterback, at linebacker, and who have been there for a number of years now. And I think the time has come at both of those schools for those coaches to say, hey, this is your team, this is your time. It's time to really come together. And the expectation at both of those schools is that you're going to win 9-10 games a year, and they can keep that up. But more important than having a really awesome regular season record is preparing for the playoffs. And so if you can stay healthy, and if you can also peak at the right time and bring a lot of guys along and sustain what has and build on what you have been building toward for a number of years now, I think both of those teams are going to be in really good spots.
Ben, another grouping of two, Rustburg and Brookville. They're also in that spot where they like to get to the postseason, but they like to be a little bit more shored up to make a deeper postseason run than they've been able to make in prior years. I know Brookville is just trying to get back there with Mark Lindenberg, Rustburg with Trey Ross, a new first-year head coach. How similar are they in terms of that both of them seem to be in spots where you got coaches, head coaches who are relying on experience, but also coaches that really are trying to deflect the attention from themselves, the positive attention at least, to their players?
Yeah, I think both Rustburg and Brookville are similar in this regard, and that is there appears to be a ton of optimism in both programs right now. I wasn't sure how that was going to play out with Rustburg, simply because Rustburg lost a lot of talent from last year, but there's plenty of talent back, and there's a lot of speed back as well. And what I saw today was kids that were excited to play for Trey Ross, the new coach there. Seems like he's really building relationships with kids a lot. He put a lot of emphasis on that. And that's something that I think has gotten kids excited to play for him. And then at Brookville, I really think this is going to be a breakout year for Brookville. I think there's not only a really good coaching staff in place, but there's also a lot of kids who have come up through who have learned the system now through 1 year with a new head coach, and then you've got kids coming into the system as well. Part of this rebuild at Brookville is focused on the tradition at Brookville of football, and that tradition is really strong, and it's a really tight knit group. And so when Brookville gets back to that, and those kids really kind of bond together, I think you're going to see a Brookville squad that is going to shock a lot of people.
Ben, last one for you, the LCA Bulldogs. They're in their own class. They have been the last couple of years. No Gideon Davidson, but still plenty of talent around that program. How different is the vibe and approach, not just within LCA about their success, because it probably is still process focused, but around the Seminole District where there's reverence, but maybe this slight undercurrent of opportunity, if nothing more than the fact that, well, a top 100 player in the country is no longer on the Bulldog roster. As talented as they are, I mean, when you're talking about Gideon Davidson and people at Clemson thinking he may be the primary running back by the end of the year, that guy's not there. And just by virtue of that, again, other teams see more of an opportunity to maybe not beat LCA, certainly not knock them off, but there's a chance to challenge them now.
Yeah, I don't think, LCA is going to be in a bad position at all. But at the same time, I think it's going to take time for the Bulldogs to really implement what Coach Frank Rocco wants to do there. And every team is kind of like that, right, in its own way. But you're going from a really powerful squad and a team that really knew, was very football savvy with 3 Division I guys on it. And you've got to replace a big lineman in Easton Wares at Clemson, and you got to replace a really good linebacker, really strong athlete in James Deos at Navy. And so, in addition to Gideon, but you've got guys in that system now who have been there for quite a while, and some of them are now getting their shot, and some of them have been playing and not necessarily have gotten the spotlight. And so this is a team that is going to cause plenty of headaches for the Seminole District teams, I think, in general. But it's going to take time for it to gel together when you start talking about a new quarterback and a new running back that would probably start for most teams in the district as well. But it's going to take a little bit of time for them to develop. But I think, when you start talking about a 28-game winning streak and the expectations that go into that, I think this team is going to be just fine because it understands kind of the football concepts, and it understands what coaches want from them.
Ben, we understand what you bring, which is great insight on prep sports in particular, to newsadvance.com and here in the Fast Lane. Thank you for doing that with us today once again. Glad to chat with you and great to see you over at Heritage for the second annual Seminole District Football Media Days a little bit earlier.
Thanks, Ed. It was fun. I appreciate you having me on.
our pleasure. Ben Cates with us here in the Fast Lane. When we return, after that, I went over to Liberty University for Jamie Chadwell's press conference. Of course, shameless plug. He'll join us tomorrow in the Fast Lane. But before that, we'll get a real life what he said and what he meant on Coach Chadwell and everyone else with John Manson from AseaofRed.com. Next, here in the Fast Lane, Ed Lane and VTRN Sports on Facebook Live and YouTube, and VTRN Sports app, as well as Fast Lane Ed Lane, Facebook, Twitter, Insta.
Savings are heating up, and so are the summer super deals at the used car superstore on the Sheeler Motor Mile. You don't need super strength to get approved for credit. Sheeler owns the finance company. Getting approved for credit is super easy on the Motor Mile with financing options for every budget. Sheeler makes car buying easy with the hottest brands all in one location. Cars, trucks, vans, SUVs. Many have miles in the teens, remaining factory warranties, and some are even local one-owner vehicles. Over 900 used vehicles in stock now and ready to move. More than any other dealer in the area, plus exceptional service, selection, and savings. Need some summer spending cash? Sheeler will buy your vehicle even if you don't buy from us. Plus super money for your trade. Volume selling means volume pricing, and we've got the volume with over 900 used vehicles in stock now. No games, no gimmicks, just summer super deals at the used car superstore on the Sheeler Motor Mile, your premier used car dealer, locally owned for over 50 years. ID1 exit 118C in Christiansburg. Call 866-SHEELER1. Always open at Sheeler.com.
Are your windows difficult to open and close? Are you air conditioning the outdoors with gaps around your old, worn-out windows? It's time to call Collins Siding and Windows. Let their experienced craftsmen transform your home's appearance with beautiful new windows while also saving you money on energy costs. Since 1989, Collins Siding and Window has been transforming homes in the Lynchburg area. Call Collins Siding and Window today for all of your exterior home projects. Call today, 434-525-6307.
Summertime means hot temperatures, but hot deals are at InsaneRadioDeals.com. Check out great deals from the Lynchburg Hillcats, both general public and premium reserve tickets at the site right now. Try scuba classes from Aqua Trek Adventures. Plus, one of the best deals of all, Linux and Lynchburg Bedliners, a $700 value for only $567. Hot deals during this hot summer at InsaneRadioDeals.com. Tuesday on the morning warm-up, Commanders and NFL insider Blake Lewis joined us to talk how the Terry McLaurin contract situation got to a trade request and how joint practices will look with the New England Patriots this week. Wednesday, a jam-packed show. Mike Barber talking UVA and Bryson Gordon talking Liberty on the morning warm-up, so join us. VTRN Sports, 93.3 FM, 1320 AM, and the VTRN Sports app. Also streaming live on YouTube at youtube.com/@VTRN Sports Lynchburg.
Step into the Fast Lane 24/7 at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the Fast Lane.
Technically speaking, the word competition can be interpreted a number of different ways, but the one common thread has been that, I'll go back to a bite we played with Kyle Krantz last week, and this kind of blends the idea of competition with what Liberty's looking for out of players, and frankly, the difference between last year and this year, which is how you show effort and how you compete to be part of the competition that is not just one chunk of time, which is now in camp, but frankly, ongoing throughout the year.
Yeah, and we have a bunch of guys that have a ton of talent. Now they got to work to make sure that they're learning the scheme and learning what to do and how to do it, and then doing it with elite effort. And then, again, go back to that word consistently. They have to do it all the time. It's not just a one-day thing. For the depth to be real, there's got to be no drop-off from 1 to 2 to 3 or however many we have. But, yes, we have a talented group at a bunch of different positions, and now we just got to put it all together. And Joe spoke to the connection part and do it for one another. I mean, that's Coach Chadwell said it in the first meeting, right? Effort is how you show someone you love them. So we got to play hard for one another every day.
I was so excited to comment on Kyle Krantz's quote, the Liberty defensive coordinator, about effort being, showing how much you love someone is the effort that you give, paraphrasing that, of course, that I cut him off. But a lot of that is the attitude for Liberty. It seems to be consistent. It will be different and judged different, and the message might be different. And I hope it's not if you're a Liberty fan, but I don't think the coaches are afraid this year of kind of giving a blunt assessment. They haven't been from the end of last year to this year, and frankly, even during the struggles of last year. But a lot of that is, how do you continue with that competition, particularly as depth charts come out, knowing that at quarterback, it's kind of, you want to have that set in stone. But everything else, there's a lot of flexibility to move things around. So somebody who's monitoring competitions, he's got the competition meter going almost at a seaofred.com and at a Sea of Red on Twitter, _Sea of Red on Instagram. John Manson back with us once again in the Fast Lane. John, great to be speaking with you. You've got your 5 competition battles to watch for the Liberty Flames. Quarterback is number 1, but we're going to put that to the side. For the rest of them, how much do you anticipate these competition battles being things that clarify to an extent in camp, but coaches leave room for flexibility based on the lead up to the main game and, frankly, what happens once the pads go on in real life action?
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. I definitely think there will be time, as you go into the season, to have some of these depth chart battles play out themselves into the first few weeks of the season. And I think that's probably becoming more and more common amongst college football, especially the FBS ranks with the transfer portal, because some of these guys we're hearing the coaching staff talk about in these press conferences, they just got on campus in the last month or two. So they haven't had time to adjust to the playbook. The linebacker, Darrell Farrar, you've heard linebacker from Appalachian State. You've heard Coach Chadwell talk about him. Coach Krantz has talked about him. Coach Lynham, the linebackers coach, has also talked about him as well, too. And he's expected to make a big impact based on what they've said. But he's still, Coach Chadwell talked about how he has spent more time in the Liberty football building this summer than Coach Chadwell did himself, as he's trying to get up to speed with the playbook and the schemes and the terminology that the team uses. So for a lot of these transfers that joined in the summer, I think that's going to be something that, you think about the offensive line, a lot of new faces there. So, you probably got the returners, probably have the leg up on them on some of those transfers at some of those position battles. But as you get into the first 2, 3, 4 weeks of the season, maybe that's an extended, not to call it a training camp, because those games count, right? The wins and losses matter, and they add up at the end of the season. But maybe an extended look for some of these guys where maybe they're, second string week 1, but by, conference play in October, they're sitting atop of the depth chart. So those are some things that we'll have to continue to monitor even into the first few weeks of the season as the coaching staff learns all their players, the newcomers particularly, as well as the players, the newcomers learning this team, this system, their teammates, their coaching staff, the playbook, all of that inside and out.
I'm going to give a quick nod to our guy, Michael Lombardi, the North Carolina football GM, but the 3-time Super Bowl winning NFL exec, because he's the one who kind of helped me coin this term of want to have, got to have, and need to have. And I'm looking at _Sea of Red on Instagram and your position battles of quarterback, offensive line, defensive line, and running back. If you're talking about for Liberty, would you put the running back and defensive line battles in the want to have, and then the offensive line in the gotta have, where you gotta have some clarity on that, and the quarterback you need to have, because D-line and running back, you'll rotate guys throughout the season. O-line you want, and you probably need to have a set group of guys, but there may be rotations, whereas quarterback, that's the must-have, where you don't want to be toggling between quarterbacks, because as the old saying goes, if you got multiple, you don't have any.
Yeah, my brain was heading that same direction, and if you got 2 quarterbacks, you have 0. So that's something Liberty doesn't want, is to play this quarterback carousel. And I think the hope that Coach Chadwell and Coach Willie Korn and the rest of that staff has is that by week 1, the quarterback position is one that you've got solidified. And those guys, talking about the transfers, they've all been there since January. And then you also got the returners and Jaden Bradford and Ryan Berger. So I think, they've had time to learn the playbook, to learn the system. The coaching staff's had time to learn them, study their film at prior institutions, and the hope would be to name that starter late in this month, late in the month of August, going into that game week against Maine, and have that solidified. And hopefully you don't have to change it. Like, if you don't have to change it, your starting quarterback, that means he's doing a good job. So if you start to have a quarterback carousel, that's probably because there's been question marks. But I also agree, like, running back is one of the the position battles we're talking about and highlighting and focusing, because a lot of those guys from the last couple of years are gone. Quentin Cooley, Billy Lucas, even some guys further down the depth chart like a James Jointer and a Victor Venn. who had some opportunities the last couple of years. They went to the transfer portal. So, there's a Vaughn Blue returning, which, we know that name, but he's had injury issues. And last year, frankly, I don't think he lived up to the expectation that I think a lot of us had on him. So can he get to that level? Can he, Coach Chadwell talked about Blue being a guy that could be a breakout candidate this year. And then obviously Juju Gray, who also had injury issues last year, has been moved to the running back position full time. But, that's one position that I don't worry about too much, because everywhere Coach Chadwell's been and everywhere he's been with this offense, they've figured it out at running back. You might not have a Quentin Cooley with, 1,400 rushing yards and double-digit touchdowns, but you might have a three-headed monster, for example, with a Vaughn Blue, a Juju Gray, a Caden Williams, maybe even an Evan Dickens, the Georgia Tech transfer, getting into that mix and figuring out. But back to your point, you got to have the offensive line figured out, because those are the guys that are paving the way to make the holes for those running backs to find. If there's no holes, you don't have to worry about it. But I do have confidence in, first of all, the coaching staff, the system. They've always gotten it done as far as being able to find a way to run the ball in their time at Liberty and in their time at previous institutions, most notably at Coastal Carolina, previously with, Bill Durkin, offensive line coach. I think he's one of the top, certainly group of 5 offensive line coaches in the country. So just give him the time. He's got the pieces. Just give him the time to kind of, plug them, work on that puzzle, if you will, right? Plug in all the pieces and get them in the right spot and make sure they all fit together. And I think they'll have that running game. And I also think, I said this in our podcast, the See Red podcast last week, I also think that we could see this team be more run dominant this year. Caden Salter's no longer here. He's a guy, was a guy that was, could be a gunslinger and throw the ball all over the field. Ethan Vasco, even Ryan Berger, two of the guys are probably leading the quarterback battle, if you had to guess. They're not necessarily that guy. They're probably more of a game manager type quarterback where, they don't mind, running the ball, 30 times a game, 35 times a game, and maybe passing it 10 times if that's what you got to do to move the sticks and to win the game. So it'll be interesting to watch. I'm not as concerned about the running back. I'd be more concerned. Concern's probably not the right word. Paying more attention to the offensive line than I would the running back. And same to your point with the defensive line as well too. I think with the defense, what we've seen so far early in camp, Liberty is just. You've heard them talk. You heard the coaches talk about the depth they have on that side of the ball, the deepest it's ever been. You got a lot of returners, a lot of veterans coming in through the portal. I think it's just the depth chart. You can almost throw it out because these guys are just going to be rotated in pretty much at will. And we've seen that a lot through the first few days or so of camp. It's hard to put a depth chart together because, who's the one, who's the twos, because they're rotating them in and out so much. So I think there's a lot of depth on that side of the ball that, it doesn't matter if you're first or second on the depth chart, you're going to play.
John Manson, theseaofred.com, with us in the fast lane. John, we'll wrap it up on this, but routinely, and it kind of goes back to the bite we played from Kyle Krantz, the co-defensive coordinator, about showing love with effort. But how surprised have you been, not necessarily about turning the page from last year to this year? That story is kind of hung over this program and will until the opener against Maine. But the fact that they seem to have a plan, which is, effort and, as Willie Korn mentioned, earned is the word of the year, that there seems to be a real plan within this coaching staff to not just, turn the corner on last year, but how to sustain that.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear the coaching staff talk about earning it. And you've also got the players talking about it as well, too. So it seems like it's something that's really sunk in. It's something that Coach Chadwell talked about back in spring ball, which is all the way back in late January, early February, when Liberty had their quote-unquote spring practice in the heart of winter, right, for us here in Lynchburg. But, yeah, I mean, that's something that they've focused on. And really, I think they paid a lot of attention into, you also heard Coach Lynham and Coach Fearball, the defensive assistants earlier this week in their press conference, talk about how, when you're looking in the transfer portal, yeah, you can look at a guy's film and see exactly what they, can do on tape. But more important than that for guys in transfer portal is how do they fit, right? How do they fit in this system, in this program from an intangible type perspective, right? From you know, your mindset, your mentality. Do you love the game of football? Are you willing to put on the hard hat and go to work and roll up your sleeves and do the hard work? You know, you heard, you know, Coach Lanham was talking about Darrell Farrar, the linebacker that I talked about a minute ago, is how he's willing to do that. He has that mindset, that makeup, and if you have that attitude, then you can work with the rest of the stuff. You can mold the rest of the guys into, you know, maybe they're lacking in some sort of type of game thing that will, you know, for the system, how it'll fit perfectly for Liberty. But you can teach that, right? You can teach those things. You can't teach effort. You can't teach desire, heart. You know, those sort of things are your unteachables, the intangibles. So, you know, it sounds like, at least so far, you know, you talked about how the real depth chart hasn't come out yet. So at least so far, everybody's happy and feeling good. But once that real depth chart comes out and people start to see where they stack up, are they still bought in? Do they still, you know, believe in the earning part that the coaching staff's preaching to them? And that's something we might not find out until, you know, we get into the season and this team starts to face their first bit of adversity, which you know is going to come at some point in time.
Well, we've been honored to earn the great insight from John Manson from ASeaofRed.com today in the Fast Lane, and Sea of Red on Twitter, and JC Manson for his personal account. John, good to be chatting with you. We love connecting in the Fast Lane, and we'll do it again in another week.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on, Ed.
It's our pleasure to chat with John Manson from ASeaofRed.com. And yes, the shameless plug that we'll have Coach Jamie Chadwell, good Lord willing, tomorrow in the Fast Lane. So check that out as well. Meanwhile, on to VSiN's Make It Rain with Adam Shine on W227BG Timberlake, WVGM AM Lynchburg, WMNA Gretna, Danville, Southside. Now we'll be on to Make It Rain from VSiN and back tomorrow 5 to 6.